Welcome to Ideas to Learn, part 19 of SQL video series. I'm Ganesh. In our previous video, we have discussed about what is an index and how we can create index. And in this video, we will discuss about what is an auto increment and how we can apply it in our queries. If you look at this employee table, it has 10 names and ID starting from 1 to 10, age and gender type fields. So whenever a new employee is going to be inserted in this table, so what we are going to do is, we are going to add 1 to the last ID which is available in the database. That is, the ID is starting from 1 to 10, and the next record when I'm going to insert, I will insert as my previous record plus 1. So 10 plus 1 equal to 11. So that's the logic when we are going to insert any new employees in our employee table. So we can get rid of this manual task, and we can set like whenever we are inserting a new record, it should automatically fetch the last value and it should increment 1 to it, and this can be achieved by the auto increment concept. Let's see how we can implement it using an example. If you look at here, this is the employee table we have created, and if you look at that ID we have created in varchar, but this auto increment property will not work for string data types. Since this varchar is a string data type, it will not work on varchar, and it will only work on integer fields. This is the syntax for auto increment property. So if I use this, I can write like this: identity 1, 1. So it is saying some error. So if you look at that error message, it tells identity column ID must be of data type int, big int, etc. They are all integer data types. So it clearly tells we cannot implement this auto increment property on string data types. We can only implement this auto increment property on integer data types. So I'm also changing this ID field as integer, as I'm going to store only the integer values. So after changing this, I'm executing the query. Employee table is already existing in our database. So let's drop the table and recreate it. I'm executing this query again. Table is created now. If you execute the select query on the employee table, clearly we can see there are no records present in it. I'm copying this query again for inserting a record. I'm going to insert Tom. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm passing the ID value as null here. And let's execute this query. It clearly tells in order to insert a data in an identity field, then the identity insert needs to be turned on. So even though we are giving null, it is throwing this error. Let's give some value like 1. I'm executing it. Even for 1, I'm getting the same error. So the point to note here is, if a field is an identity field, then we cannot pass values to it. So how we can achieve this? Since we are not passing the values for all the fields, we need to explicitly mention what are all the fields we are passing the values. We can do it over here. Insert into employee. After that, we can specify the columns for which we are passing the values. So name, and we are not going to insert data for ID. So I'm not giving the ID field over here. I'm moving to age and then gender type. And in values, I'm specifying Tom, and I'm not going to give the value for ID. Then the age 25 and the gender type M. Let's try inserting this record. As we expected, one row inserted successfully. Let's select this record and see what happened. Here the employee Tom is populated with the value of ID as 1. Let's follow the same method and try to insert more records to it. Let's insert Jerry now. Now let's select the query and execute it. Okay. Now let's select the employee table. Okay. We could see Jerry record is inserted with the ID of 2, which is expected. And you can ask why it is inserted as 2. it can insert as 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever, right? The sequence always need not to be in increment of 1. It can be an increment of 5 or 10 or 100, anything, right? Similarly, it is not necessarily to start with 1. I can start from 1000. I can start from 10,000. Or I can start from something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can we do all those? Absolutely. If you look at the syntax or the definition, we have specified as identity of 1, 1. So this 1 at the beginning is the starting value of the auto increment property. So here we set as 1. As we have set this as 1, our ID field started generating with 1. And the next one mentioned here is the counter, which means it tells us on what basis we need to increment whenever a new record is inserted. It is nothing but an increment value. If we give as 1, it will increment in 1. If we give as 5, it will increment in 5s, like 1, 6, 11, etc. If you wish, you can explore on this auto increment property by giving various possibilities. Now let's insert a mini as the third record. Okay, since we have inserted this query and we are passing the value for ID, we are getting this error. But let's say I wish to insert that ID field manually this time. Can we do that? Absolutely. To do that, we can write like this. Set identity insert employee on. That is, I'm telling that identity insert should be on this table employee. Let's execute this query. Commands completed successfully. So now I'm expecting if I run this query, it should execute it without any issue. Let's execute this and see if that happens. I'm executing it. We are getting an error. An explicit value for the identity column in the table employee can only be specified when a column list is used and identity insert is on. So what we have missed here is we need to explicitly specify the field list of the table. So in order to mention the field list, I'm copying this and I'm including ID to this. Let's execute this now. One row affected. So we have inserted this record without any issue. So the point to note here is when we are explicitly inserting the value for an identity field, we need to do two things. One is we need to turn the identity insert as on, and the second one we need to explicitly provide the field list. By having this identity insert as on, we can even skip the sequence and we can insert any number in the ID field. Let me try to insert the Donald record with an ID value of 6. I'm selecting this query, I'm executing it. Okay. Let's retrieve the employee table. We can see Donald is inserted with an ID of 6, but if you look at the last value of that ID field, it is 4. So after 4, it skipped 5 and inserted 6. So now we have turned on the identity insert. Let's see how to turn off the identity insert. It's a similar procedure. I'm copying this. Instead of on, I'm mentioning as off. Let's execute this and see. Commands completed successfully. So we are back to the previous state. So if we try to insert an employee record with ID value in it, we will get an error as we have turned off the identity insert. Let's prove it by executing this query. With the value as Dora and 7 as employee ID, it clearly tells we cannot explicitly insert it as the identity insert is set to off for the table employee. So how we can insert this record? To do that, as a first step, I should not provide the identity field over here. Let's try to insert it. Executed successfully. If you see, we have employee ID. After 4, we have 6. Let's execute the select query and see what we have now. If you look at the result set, we have 4 and after 4 we have 6. And the latest record which we have inserted, it populates the ID as 7. Although we haven't have the value of ID field as 5, because of this auto increment property, it inserted the value as 7, which is expected. We have specified as identity 1, 1. So it looked back to the previous value, which is 6 in this case, and it increment by 1, which is 7. This is all about auto increment property. If you find this video useful, I suggest you to share this with your friends and colleagues. That's it for now. Thank you.